Now, with the effects of climate change that is currently affecting all member states, and with the recent COVID and supply chains disruption, we find ourselves in a situation where production at the local level has to be increased, but we still have a lot of challenges. We have climate change issues. We have most severe drought throughout the Caribbean. We have sea rise. We have saltwater intrusion in our aquifers. So it is very important that we start to do things a bit different in terms of irrigation, rainwater harvesting, conservation, etc. So basically, there are several types of irrigation that we practice within the region. There's sprinkler irrigation, furrow irrigation. That's for countries that have a lot of water, subsurface irrigation, and drip irrigation. One of the most important things that you have to take into consideration when you're planning irrigation installation is to know your terrain. If you have flatlands, if you have gentle slope, if you have steep slopes, because all this would come into consideration when you're designing your irrigation systems, where your source of water is and where you plan to pump the water to. Another key component is the distance from the water source would determine the size pipes that you use for delivery from your pumping system. Other component is know your soils, because this has a lot to do with how much water that you would need to apply based on.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown.
Hello?
Ms. Henry from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm here with about 18 farmers from Agriculture Region 1, and they indicated that you are going a bit too fast.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, would you be able to share your video as well? Your video? Thanks.
If what?
Would you be able to share your video?
Yes.
Yes. Your camera, sir. Yeah. So they see who's presenting. Thanks.
Okay. The reason why I was kind of going fast was I have a time limit, and there's a lot of information to cover. Sorry about that. So as I was saying previously, you have to know the soil type that you're dealing with so that you can manage your scarce water resources. Now, this question comes up all the time as to when is the best time to irrigate. The best time to irrigate is actually early mornings, but sometimes it's not really possible for that to happen. But it's the best time to irrigate, like anything from 5 a.m. to about 8, 9, 10 a.m. before the sun gets to its highest. The evening is also the best time to irrigate, but what happens when you irrigate in the evenings? It creates a situation where you can have fungal growth. And irrigating early in the mornings keep the soil cool and moist during the hottest periods of the day. Another important aspect to consider is you need to know the crop that you're growing and the crop water requirements so that you can schedule your irrigation cycles at the appropriate time so that you maximize on your irrigation schedules. So for example, when you just transplant or you just sow the seeds, at that stage of the crop does not require the large amounts of water that you would need later on in the crop production. Now, there are some tools that we can use to measure the moisture that is available in the soil so that we can schedule our irrigation by information and not by guessing. So this one is basically a tensiometer. What this does is measure the amount of available moisture that is available to the plant at any one particular time. So it reads and gives you information. So once you go in the field and you check the tensiometer and you see based on the reading, like this one is showing wet, so you don't necessarily have to irrigate. Then you would see dry, wet. Now, if you have this instrument installed in your fields, when it reaches 50, it's an indication that the moisture levels are getting low. So then is when you need to irrigate and bring the moisture content back up to field capacity. This is also another instrument that a cheap one that can be bought. It's a soil moisture probe that you just stick in the soil and it will give you a reading. This is another one, a cheap one, because we're trying to find affordable equipment that we can use to monitor the moisture in our soils. Now, for those of us who have to do a lot of cost of production, this is another useful equipment. This is a water meter so that you can actually measure the amount of water that you apply to your crop, and you can get a costing for it as well. So when you're doing your cost of production, to see what is your cost of production for a particular crop, this is also very useful. Now, before the seminar, we got a lot of questions from individuals in terms of drawings for appropriate irrigation systems, field systems. So these are the next couple of slides which show you drawings of irrigation systems. Most of them would be designed in terms of using tanks, small water catchments to do either gravity feeding or in some instances solar pumping. Now this one shows a tank on a platform which is basically gravity feeding, and as you can see from the top, it's capable of irrigating small areas. This is another one that we would be implementing in another project, which you have a structure that does the rainwater harvesting, a solar pump that would pump the water to your farm, your holdings. And these are not expensive systems that you have to implement. This is a tank that is on a platform. This was constructed to assist ECO with the EBA project with the vetiver grass. And we was doing it in an isolated location. So this is on a platform and it's 100% gravity feeding. Now, a lot of us in the region, when we start to think about rainwater harvesting, water for irrigation, and so a lot of us start to think about building ponds, dams, etc. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. There are some systems that you can implement for short-term use, even long-term use. They have tanks that, like in this photo, you see 3 tanks, they can be connected to each other, and then depending on the distance you have to go, a pump can be installed at the end, or you can do gravity feeding. And we also have some situations where we have backyard gardeners, small holdings that you cannot afford to purchase these large tanks. There's simple things that you can use, small containers that you can use to develop a system. Then I know most of us in the region have relatives and friends overseas, and we get a lot of these barrels come to us from time to time. Even if we don't get it, other people get it. And we have a lot of these barrels as they're sitting on. They can be turned into something useful in terms of put in 3, 4, 6, 8 of them together, put in pipes attached to them so that you can get a system to collect your rainwater and use it for irrigation purposes. Now, in this modern day and age, a lot of us don't have the time to go to our holdings and irrigate. Sometimes it's just to irrigate alone. It takes time depending on where your situation is. But there's some tools that can help you. This is an automated water timer. It's can be available. I think I got this one from Amazon. Costs about 40 US. And you can actually schedule your irrigation cycles based on this. It works with battery, so it can be in remote locations. And for example, if you schedule to irrigate 3 days a week, you can set it at that. If you want to irrigate for 5 minutes, every irrigation cycle, it's capable of doing that. It's very useful. So the time that you would spend to drive, go out to your farm just to turn on the water and wait, this could do the work for you while you have other things doing. One of the things that we also have to take into consideration when designing irrigation systems is our filtration system. This photo is a filtration system of a farmer that has a larger holdings, but he didn't have a good filtration system. So we find out when you pump in the water from the dam, every 3-4 hours he has to go and clean this filter because they really get clogged up with sediments, algae, whatever. So in consultation with the farmer, we now implemented this. This is a gravity type filters with gravel, and it does a lot of good filtration. So it makes his system now become more efficient and more effective for him. So rather than him now having to go clean the filters every 2-3 hours, this one can provide the same system, and it also has the capability to do back flushing. So once it collects all the inert material, the algae, particles that would clog up the drip irrigation systems, this would take care of it. But this one is for like large holdings that you're pumping from a dam, a river, whatever. But you also have to take into consideration small holdings as well, and they have smaller filters that would do the job for you. This one is on a farm that we did with ICA in collaboration with Cardi with the crowdfunding project. And this farmer was pumping from a dam. As you can see, the small concrete structure, there's an irrigation pump in there. And this filter filters the water. It's a 2-inch, this filter. Does a very good job. The only drawback with this one, you have to monitor it and clean it a bit more often, maybe every 2-3 weeks, depending on the sediments that get accumulated in the filter. This one is from the same filter that you saw previously, but there's a primary filter and a secondary filter. If you notice in the slide, you have the secondary filter, which is a small black one, and then the water meter. What this does, it filters the solution from the tank for the fertigation. So this will take care of all the small particles, some of the sediments from the fertilizer, the inert material. And when it goes through the drip system, you will now get practically clean sediment-free water. But from time to time, you have to clean it so that it becomes more efficient. Because what we're trying to do is to provide efficient systems so that the farmer or the backyard gardener or whoever has less technical work to do so that they can concentrate on more production. And this is the setup with the Venturi injector that applies the the fertilizer through the irrigation systems, which makes your operation more efficient. So instead of you now having to go and apply fertilizer by hand, etc., etc., you can now apply it through the injector system. Now, some of the things that we practice in Antigua is to grow a lot of cover crops to conserve whatever moisture is there, whether you apply it yourself or by rainfall. So this is basically a sweet potato crop. It was established under drip irrigation, and once it's fully established, you will conserve a lot of moisture. So you will eliminate having to irrigate as often as possible. Because prior to 2010, nobody in Antigua irrigated sweet potato. But after we did a lot of work and showed them the cost benefit between irrigation and non-irrigation of root crops, almost everybody in Antigua now plants sweet potato and to a lesser extent cassava with drip irrigation. Now, this is an interesting photo. We have a coconut project ongoing in Antigua, and this was a nursery that was established. You can see the nuts, the irrigation system, and the moisture from the irrigation. But irrigation by itself is not going to provide all the answers. So we had now to implement a mulching system. For this one, what we did was just apply grass mulch. So this is now a recent photo of the plot with the grass mulch. So in a lot of instances, we have to also implement techniques to conserve the moisture that we put down. We have to do it in Antigua because we're very dry. So we use basically two types of mulch: grass mulch where available.
Okay. You'll have a new rambutan?
And plastic mulch. Now this photo shows irrigation system that was set up for coconut production. It's a bit different than the ones that you would use for vegetable crops. This one is so flexible that it's a blank line with the green emitter that you can install in the root zone of food trees. So this one is good for food trees. And we had installed this on a government farm that was propagating coconuts. So we have the drip line and the emitters were installed in the root zone. As the trees get bigger, you can now expand and put the emitters where the roots are for the moisture that you put down. Now in Antigua, we practice a lot of plastic mulch and T-tape. Fortunately for us, we have equipment. So from this photo, you can see the tractor with the mulcher, and it has the T-tape, so everything can go down at the same time. I know a lot of you in the Windward Islands are not accustomed to this, but it can also be installed by hand. You see the guys now using the plastic mulch. The T-tape is already on the bank, and you can do this manually. It takes quite a bit of time and experience, but if you don't have the tractor services to do it, you can now do it by hand. Now with the plastic mulch, it is affordable in the sense that I think one roll of plastic mulch with about 4 mil is about 8,000 feet on it, and it costs about 800 EC. So you can actually mulch an acre with one roll easily. This is the tractor applying the mulch. And what we do in Antigua a lot is plastic mulch, the irrigation, the fertigation. but it also gives us the flexibility to grow more than one crop in the mulch, because we practice a lot of minimum tillage to conserve whatever moisture there is. So sometimes we can get 3-4 crops out of one mulch application. This is a field of hot peppers that we established about a week ago. And we're very big on hot pepper seed production. And knowing our situation in terms of moisture and water, we have to do this because we run in the pepper plot in some instances for 9 months. And invariably, the crop would be grown in a lot of drought periods. So this gives us our key advantage in terms of managing the crop. It also provides a lot of cover for weeds. So rather than now we have to be weeding the whole plot, we just control the furrows. Sometimes it's just basically hand weeding, in some instances, chemical application with herbicide. And this also reduces your cost of production in terms of labor and labor costs. Now, this is a very interesting photo. On one of our trips to Barbuda, we met with this farmer that plants peanuts. But because Barbuda is so dry, the farmer was unable to plant more than one crop of peanuts a year. So normally he would plant peanuts in September. That is when traditional rain season. But after our intervention with applying him with this irrigation system, the farmer can now plant 2 crops of peanut a year. So sometimes it's just a small intervention that can change things for you. So you now can, because in Barbuda, they have a lot of underground water. It's just that sometimes when it gets real dry, the water quality is not all that good because of the saline content, but you can still produce. So this shows you just small interventions in terms of irrigation system can help in your production system. Now, as I said before, at CARI in Antigua, we practice a lot of crop rotation. So sometimes we get 3-4 crops out of one plastic mulch application. So that means sometimes we have crops growing in a particular area, different crops for almost 12 to 18 months without replowing, that sort of thing, which is beneficial. So sometimes we have, this is the same plot, we have corn. Previous to that, we had hot peppers, then we had cucurbits. So once you have the mulch, it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of planting other crops. Now this is another plot that we have with sweet potato intercrop with cassava. I know a lot of you in the islands that have a lot of water would be surprised that we plant in cassava and sweet potato with irrigation. But in order to maximize our situation in terms of food security, we have to do this. And then it becoming more prevalent in other Caribbean countries that are water rich. We have times of the year, mid-January to sometimes May, is when we have a lot of drought conditions and we still need to grow. So these are some of the techniques that you can implement in terms of intercropping, planting other crops for food production and income generation. This is a photo of some plantings that we established at the field station in Antigua, utilizing the same irrigation system where we use a blank line and install the emitters in the root zone so that you don't have water wasting between the trees. Now, a lot of us in the region, when we talk about irrigation, we only study about irrigation for crops, but we still have the livestock sector to deal with. Some farmers are livestock farmers, and drought conditions affect animals way more seriously than crops, because once there are no available animal feed, you either have to slaughter the animals or they would die. So what we did, we established a plot of mulberry, and it's under irrigation. So you can come and cut feed the animals. This is a plot that we did in collaboration with ECA as well. So you see, we have the gliricidia, the mulberry, the African stargrass, guinea grass. So you have it being irrigated. So in the dry, hot weather periods, you can still produce animal feed, which is affordable, and you can maintain your livestock until such times that the rain comes to give you relief in terms of forages. This is another photo of the same irrigation system, irrigating yams, banana, cassava. Now, one of the questions that was asked when the forum was advertised is what to do with recycled water bottles. We have a system here in Antigua that was introduced by CARI representative Paul Lucas in terms of utilizing the water bottles to grow vegetables. So what this is, take the large water bottles, cut it in two. The top section we fill with soil, and we have a wick system that goes into the bottom section that is filled with water. And as you can see, we have good production of lettuce, pak choy, wherever you want to go. And it's a means of using the recycled bottles. So a lot of these bottles don't go to the landfill and create another problem for us. This is another photo of it, where another section where we painted the bottles black so that it deflects the direct sunlight and a lot of evapotranspiration don't take place as fast. So the amount of water that you put in, and then you can also mix your fertilizer in the water so that it provides the nutrients. So this is a unique way of utilizing and recycling the water bottles. So for us, other persons that have small backyards and you don't have the space that you think you have to build raised beds and boxes and stuff, all you need is just the soil and your seeds, and you can grow crops this way. But we also implemented a subsurface irrigation system where in the dry months, when we have fruit trees, the fruit trees still need water, but there's no rain coming. So again, Paul being the water specialist here, we devised this clay pot subsurface system where we got some clay pots made, we fill them with water and install them in the ground, and the water slowly releases and provide moisture for the trees. Now, if you notice in this photo, as I said earlier, when you're installing them, you need to know the topography of land. So this one, it's down a gentle slope. So we will put it at the top of the slope so that when the water filters through the pot, it filters down into the root zone. We also have a system where we use the same water bottles to irrigate the fruit trees. So we would fill the water bottles, punch small holes at the bottom, and over time it provides moisture. Sometimes when you want to get more moisture coming out of the bottles, all they do is just open the cover and the water would come out a bit faster. And we also have this technique where we put stones around the roots that would provide moisture retention, things of that nature. So this is also a good way of utilizing the water bottles for recycling. So all you have to do is fill them and leave them. So your fruit trees would now become productive if you're depending on your fruit trees for even your personal home use or for revenue generation, especially in the dry months. I know a lot of us don't spend time on irrigating fruit trees when it's dry because we're utilizing the water for our vegetable crops, but the fruit trees still need to be productive. This is another photo of the water bottle and the fruit tree. And all these trees were planted in extreme drought conditions. Right now, they're very productive. Now, one of the questions that were asked was costs for irrigation equipment, costs for installation. This is just a basic cost for irrigation equipment. This is just for the irrigation equipment alone for 1 acre land. It's the T-tape, the submain, the connectors, the filter, and the venturi. So the other costs that would be involved in this would basically be dependent on the distance from your irrigation setup to your pumping. If it's gravity feed, you use the tank, you need to get the other PVC pipes, etc., etc. I would not know the cost for those depending on your location. Another question that was asked is suppliers. Our main supplier for drip irrigation material is Jamaica Drip. They provide a lot of drip irrigation material, technical advice, you name it. Then there's a negotiation going on between Jamaica Drip and some people in Antigua to establish an agency in Antigua where they would probably service the OECS, which would be a lot